Hey y'all, for those who don't know me, my name is Destiny Downs and my fiance is Austin Malvo. I'm going to tell you a little bit about us before I explain our story. Me and Austin have been together almost 3 years. We've already lost two boys, Garrett, who had miscarried at 18 weeks in September of 2018, and Ezra, who had miscarried at 16 weeks in January of 2019 due to me having incompetent cervix. Well, we finally had a rainbow baby, Baylor Auden Malvo, Bam Bam to some, at 25 weeks on December 29, 2019, at 1 pound 13 ounces. Baylor was on a vent for a few days after he was born. He had a few apnea episodes where his heart rate would drop, but overall was a pretty perfect baby. He was in the NICU for 77 days and was discharged on March 14th at 5 pounds 2 ounces. On April 12th, Easter, and also my sister's birthday, it was a pretty normal day. We woke up and headed to my mom's to dye Easter eggs around 12. We boiled crawfish, dyed eggs, and opened Easter baskets. We left mom's around 5 and decided to go fishing. We were heading to a fishing spot in Ragley, but it started pouring, so we turned around and went back to Kinder. We decided to just go to our normal fishing spot 5 minutes from the house. Me and Anthony, our 3-year-old, are the only ones interested in fishing, so we sat and talked while I fished. Austin doesn't fish, so he held and played with Baylor while talking to our friends Chris and CJ, who came to meet us. It started getting dark around 8 p.m., so at 8:09 I asked Chris the time, and we decided it was time to go home. Austin loaded the boys up in my vehicle, and I got in and fixed Anthony's movie on his portable DVD player. It took me a little minute to get it on. I'm going to stop and explain the situation that followed. I know why Baylor stopped breathing. We've known all along. We didn't want to put this information out there because of fear of judgment on our child. We want to protect him, and if you can't understand that, then I'm sorry. Baylor started crying in the car 3 minutes away from my house. I asked Anthony, our 3-year-old, to give Baylor his pacifier, not knowing that Austin took the pacifier out of Baylor's car seat. Baylor then stopped crying. When I got home, I opened the door to see Anthony watching his movie with his hand over Baylor's face. I asked him what he was doing. He replied that Baylor was crying, and I said I knew and for him to move his hand. I unbuckled Baylor, and he wasn't responsive. He normally cries whenever I take him out of his seatbelt, but he wasn't moving. Anthony did not mean him any harm. He's a good big brother, always want to help out. It's a normal thing for him to give Baylor his pacifier. That's why I asked him to give it to him instead of pulling over on the side of the highway to tend to him. I assumed when Baylor got quiet that Anthony had given him the pacifier. I felt for a pulse and couldn't feel him breathing, so I immediately started CPR. I opened Anthony's door and got him out of the car and ran in the house. I called 911 at 8:20 and continued to CPR. Austin made it home 2 minutes later before the ambulance, so we left Anthony home with Austin's mom and jumped in his truck and made it to the hospital. I'm not sure how long it took the staff at Allen Parish Hospital to get a pulse, but it felt like forever. They are the reason that my child is alive today. Once Baylor was stable enough, he was flown to the pediatric intensive care unit at Lake Charles Memorial Hospital. Austin's mom brought Anthony to his biological mom, and we headed to Lake Charles. Once we were there and situated, Baylor was placed on oxygen and started having these hiccup episodes. Around 1 in the morning, he started having seizures. They gave him some phenobarbital to stop them, and then he became completely unresponsive. He was stable, just unresponsive. They gave us a hospitality room to stay in while he's being treated. Me and Austin finally fell asleep around 4:30 in the morning. We woke up at 6:19 on the morning of April 13th, the next day, to the sound of the code blue alarm going off on the floor. That means someone is crashing or has no heartbeat. I jumped out of the bed and raced to his room to see a few nurses start working on him. Once the code team got there, it took them about an hour and a half to get him stabilized. He had to be put on an oscillator to breathe for him. The oscillator pushed oxygen in and pulled carbon dioxide out. He was also put on dopamine to control his blood pressure. We were told he no longer had any pupillary or cornea responses, meaning his pupils wouldn't dilate and he couldn't blink. He could not move, and at that time was presumed to be brain dead. They ordered an EEG of the brain to see if he had blood flow to the brain, but had to wait until the next day for results. On April 14th, we read the results of the EEG. The results showed artifact, which was the ventilator, but they couldn't tell us if he had low impulses to the brain or none at all. His pupils were still completely non-reactive, so they ordered a nuclear scan to be done the next day. This night, Austin grabbed Baylor's hand, and Baylor started moving his body. He was wiggling and flexing his legs. On April 15th, my brother's birthday, they canceled his nuclear test because it was then not important. He obviously had some brain function and blood flow to the brain because he was now moving his body. It was then decided that he is in a severe coma. On April 16th, Baylor had a scare where his heart rate and oxygen dropped because he had a mucus plug in his airway. He was very congested and had to be suctioned out a lot and put on antibiotics. They started treating his congestion as if he had pneumonia and put him on antibiotics to break it up. His movements had improved and his vital signs were great, but he didn't have any improvement in gag, cough, or pupillary reflex. His breathing also started improving. On April 18th, the doctor started to see more brain function. The swelling in his brain had gone down some, the swelling in his eyes decreased, and his body was moving a lot more. He was now opening and closing his hands instead of just flexing them outward. He started breathing over the vent this day as well. He was started on feedings, and they started to see a pupillary response. His pupils became a little bit bigger and actually responded to the light. On April 19th, his pupils became the biggest and most reactive that they've seen yet. Here's your new Baylor update today on April 22nd. Baylor had an MRI of his brain this morning, and the results show that there is no major brain damage. The swelling in his brain has went away, and he has minimal fluid around his brain. We're not sure of his brain function, though. We do not know what he will and will not be able to do. They attempted to take him off the vent today, but his heart rate started dropping a bit, so they didn't want to stress his body and just decided to leave it in for another week. We are praying he gets his cough and gag reflex, that way he can clear his throat and be able to swallow, so he does not have to get a tracheotomy. If he can't swallow his food, he may have to receive a PEG tube. We want to thank everyone who has kept us in your thoughts and prayers while we go through this difficult time in our lives. We thank Lake Charles Memorial Hospital for doing all they can to help our little boy heal and allowing us to stay here close to him. And we also thank Allen Parish Hospital for bringing our son back to us. We have another little tidbit of information that we would like to share, and that is that Baylor is being promoted to Big Brother. For updates on Baylor, you can follow his page, Blessings for Baylor, on Facebook. I update that every night unless there is no change whatsoever, and I will be updating YouTube once every 3 days with the video updates. So thank you for following, thank you for watching, and thank you for all the prayers.